Some say the earth holds on to memories, a quiet consciousness that's embedded in every stone. It absorbs everything, carrying stories of love and loss. Sometimes you can feel it, an almost primal sensation that defies logic. It's a whisper in the wind, a shiver down your spine, as though the land is reaching out to communicate, but doesn't have the words. This belief that the land keeps memories is found in numerous cultures from every corner of the world. It's a belief that the landscape is more than just geography, that it's a silent observer of history, preserving the legacy of those who came before. Mountains, rivers, and forests are seen as stewards of the past, quietly offering their stories to those who take the time to listen. The concept of landscapes carrying memories is, in my opinion, a central theme in the game Dear Esther. Originally developed as a mod for Half-Life 2 back in 2008, and then later officially released by the Chinese Room in 2012, Dear Esther is often credited as one of the earliest walking simulators, part of a genre that de-emphasizes traditional gameplay mechanics in favor of deeper narrative and atmosphere. Rather than engaging in puzzles or combat, players explore a mysterious island and piece together a broken narrative delivered through poetic and melancholy voiceovers. This island, with its empty shores and leftover ruins, reflects the themes explored in the game. Themes of loss, isolation, and memory. The pairing of introspective narration with tangible visual cues creates a unique and emotional experience. However, opinions of Dear Esther are mixed. It's not a game for everyone, that is, if you can even consider it a game. But what I love about it is that it's largely left open to the player's own interpretation. I'll be sharing my perspectives on it, but before I go any further, I should say that from here on, the rest of the video will spoil the game. So if you haven't gotten the chance to play Dear Esther yet for yourself, I'd recommend doing that first. Unlike other games, the island in Dear Esther isn't just the setting for the story. If you ask me, it's really a central character in its own right. Its identity develops over the course of the game as more of the story is revealed to us, and we get to know its unique scars and persona. It's also worth mentioning that the game deliberately lacks any sort of sprinting mechanic, which requires us to explore the island at a slow cadence and learn every intimate detail and facet of the island step by step. Its cliffs, caves, and barren shores not only create a certain ambiance, they also provide visual and thematic cues that parallel and support the narrator's story as they're eloquently revealed to us, turning the narrator's memories into a physical reality. This creative unification of mental imagery with physical realism together contributes to a fuller understanding of the protagonist's internal struggle. The island is much more than a landscape. It's a space thoughtfully designed to evoke emotion and reflect on the unfolding story, offering players insight into the narrator's mind. The narrator refers to the island as a place forsaken by man, but touched by something greater, which sets the tone for the whole experience. The island seems disconnected from human life, yet instilled with a kind of reverence or spiritual significance. A feeling like we're walking through an abandoned cathedral. It's a feeling that immediately amplifies the narrator's emotional solitude following the wake of a tragedy that he can't escape. When we first set foot on the island at the very start of the game, it's the complete emptiness of it all that hits you first. The landscape is desolate, devoid of any real life beyond the shrubs and wildflowers clinging to the rocky earth. And the lack of any living creatures builds this surreal atmosphere of detachment, making a world that seemingly has ceased to move forward and remains frozen in time as a repository of memory. The entire story of Dear Esther revolves around the devastating car accident and untimely death of Esther herself. The island seems to not just hold on to this, but the tragedy actually appears woven into the island's very fabric. Throughout the game, we encounter broken car doors and stray wheels as if they're the skeletal remains of the car accident laying across the island. We find recurring motifs like the chemical structure of ethanol, the psychoactive ingredient in alcohol, appear repeatedly across the island, acting as a haunting reminder of not only the drunk driver, but also the narrator's reliance on drinking to dull his pain. References to the ABS braking system and its 21 circuits designed to prevent cars from skidding evoke not only the literal brake failure that led to the crash, but also the narrator's broader loss of control. These symbols, etched into the island itself, transform the environment into a physical manifestation of the narrator's memory, while his struggle is projected onto the world around him. The island is decorated with eroding buildings that further support the narrator's depictions of death and decay, as he describes his body failing to illness and his unraveling mind while sharing increasingly abstract and spiraling thoughts. The derelict lighthouse, the first structure we see, is visible from various points on the island, and what might have once been a symbol of guidance has since been extinguished, and now embodies the narrator's sense of directionless grief. The abandoned bothy, the shipwrecks, the carvings on the hillside, each evoke this feeling they've been left behind, just like the narrator who describes a world moving on from the accident, but without him. Now, if we focus specifically on the narrator's words, they unfold in disjointed fragments. His thoughts drift aimlessly, much like the player's wandering journey through winding paths and jagged cliffs. The details of the car accident emerge in scattered, erratic pieces, which I think is actually a poignant reflection on the very nature of trauma and intrusive thoughts. Trauma is rarely experienced as a linear story. Instead, it comes in sudden, unexpected bursts, triggered by the sights, sounds, and environment around us. The island becomes a stage for this process, where its features evoke memories the narrator can't fully confront. In this way, the land serves not only as a backdrop, but as a mechanism through which the narrator's grief is re-experienced, illustrating the inseparable link between memory and location. As the story unfolds, we eventually enter the caves, which are undoubtedly one of the island's most visually stunning and symbolically significant locations. Their glowing, almost heavenly formations stand in stark contrast to the bleak cliffs above, representing what I believe to be the descent into the narrator's subconscious. The narrator describes the caves as, quote, the veins of the earth, which seems to be a metaphor for the innermost layers of his mind. Cryptic symbols of neurotransmitters, astrocytes, and neurons, the biologic machinery that forms memories, are etched into the walls like ancient cave art, evoking a primal connection to how painful memories can be burned into our brains. And once again, these physical elements tether the abstract weight of the narrator's trauma to a specific moment in time, creating a bridge between memory and the concrete reality of the present. At a certain point, the player realizes the island is pulling them towards its highest point, marked by the red light of the radio tower, which becomes a central theme. The tower is visible from nearly every part of the landscape, serving as a constant reminder of the destination that awaits. Climbing upwards towards it, in a way, can be seen as the narrator's slow and deliberate confrontation with the accident. And the tower's red glow feels like both a beacon and as a warning, signaling the inevitability of reaching a point of no return. The culmination of this climb, the moment the narrator leaps from the radio tower, marks the emotional and thematic climax of the game. On one hand, the jump can be interpreted as a moment of surrender, where the narrator chooses to let go of his grief and accept the finality of his loss. But it can also be seen as an act of transcendence, as he becomes one with the island and the memories it holds. He states, quote, "I will abandon this body and take to the air, just as his spirit seems to transform into a flying bird," which may represent merging with the natural world, a symbolic dissolution of self that allows him to escape the thoughts in which he's been trapped. And for the player, the jump is both tragic and liberating, marking the end of a journey that has been as much about understanding as about closure. Ultimately, Dear Esther uses the island as a physical and symbolic representation of grief. It becomes more than a setting. It's imbued with memory, a physical manifestation of the narrator's mind, scarred by his trauma and loss. Each crumbling structure, twisting path, and looming landmark carries the weight of his experiences, making the environment an active participant in the storytelling. The island is both a repository of memory and a reflection of the human condition, inviting players to reflect on how grief and loss shape not just the individual, but the spaces they inhabit. This merging of memory and environment leaves a lasting impression, underscoring the connection between the physical world and the emotional landscapes within us. If you've made it this far, thank you for your time. Please let me know your thoughts, especially if you have a different perspective or feel that I'm totally wrong. I always read every comment and will continue to do my best to respond to each one. Thank you again, and now go for a slow walk.
Come back.